Is this thing on? Are you hearing my audio? Cool. Going?
Yep.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the apps that I use and why I use them, and like this weird thing that's happening where we're just basically holding these little robots all day long, and like they're actually literally touching our bodies all day long, causing our legs to vibrate when we don't even expect it, because we're expecting a call, and so our actual muscles are starting to behave weirdly. But that's not to say, that's not a negative judgment on it. It's just what's happening. There's sort of biology and technology are starting to merge together. And so we have to talk about what's going on, because otherwise shit could get haywire. So when I think about like when I'm just sitting here all day and what apps I'm using, so I try to use a combination of ethical apps, but then there's other apps that I just have to use, or I convince myself that I have to use because they're really good for communication and whatnot. Like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, those are all proprietary apps. Tinder for some, dating, human connection. Let's check out what's going on here. So this is GitHub. This is how I track the code development of mine. So this is Marcus doing some cool bug fixes today. I can look at Mark. So let's see, what's Mark been doing? Fixes the ringer for the iOS video chat. I can go in there, look at this crazy amazing code that Mark's writing. Bam. I mean, it's super dynamic. GitHub is an amazing site. Unfortunately, it's proprietary. Git in itself is a fucking awesome tool, because imagine you have a project, whether it's a text or code or whatever. So imagine a tree. You have a master branch, which is the core project, and then when new collaborators come in, they fork the code into their own branch, and then when they have a new addition that they want to merge back into the master branch, they request a merge, and then Mark decides if it's good enough or not to come back into the master branch. So it allows everybody to take all the code, or we also have all of our policies up on GitHub so people can critique our privacy policy, do additions to it, and recommend changes. And so it's like this peer review process and allows global collaboration. So Git is amazing. GitHub is a proprietary version of Git, which is super convenient, but ultimately it would be good if we got onto an open source version of Git. But I don't know of any other companies that have their privacy policy in terms of service on GitHub, so that literally anybody can take them, say, this sucks, this is, I don't agree with this statement, and then request a change and have it go back. So we're pretty psyched about that. What else is on here? I mean, why do I use these apps? So Facebook, obvious reasons. We've got a bunch of social pages with millions of followers on it, so we can post to them and drive traffic to our site. So I don't have to convince anyone of the energy that is in Facebook. There's tons of problems with Facebook, which is why I would like to delete them from my phone, so that I'm not, like, this app is taking my data somewhere. Here's Minds down here. So I know that Minds isn't disrespecting my data, so I might go in here and check out my newsfeed on Minds. What else do we have? Firefox, this is the browser I use because it's open source. Mozilla is an amazing company that develops open source code. They care about freedom. You might even find some X-rated stuff on there, but I'm not going to show you that. But by the way, I completely think that anything legal should be allowed on the network. So I don't feel like I'm in a position to judge what other people consume, whether it's mature content or not. That's a part of human nature. And as long as it's not abusive and illegal, then I don't have any problem with that. I mean, we're all lying to ourselves if we say that we're not looking at that stuff. So we might as well create something that facilitates that happening in a mature way. So that, okay, you're not showing 13-year-olds, that you have filtering tools so that people can really control their experience. You're not shoving it in their faces, but at the same time, you're not censoring it. Because a nipple, I mean, who's to say, it's a body part. What, you're going to tell me that you have to delete that? But anyway, those are the kinds of interesting censorship conversations we're having. But so some of these apps help me communicate. Some of these apps help me meet people. So what we did on Minds is we sort of tried to add a bunch of these things together. So I can find people near me in New York City. This guy's in New York City. What's up, Les Flips? You look cool. Let's hang out. Oh, we matched. So now I can go and send him a message and we can chat. So maybe I should meet up with him. And Tinder sort of trailblazed meeting up with people in real life. Like, I have a lot of respect for that app because even though it's proprietary, even though it's based on Facebook, even though it's all sorts of privacy issues, they solved a clear human nature problem, and it's super addictive because you can meet people and you can potentially romantically meet people, which on Minds we didn't gear it towards dating, but people could use it in any way that they wanted to. So the point being that in the same way, when I eat food, I try to eat as healthy as possible. I try to eat organic, local, but that doesn't happen. You go to restaurants, you don't know what you're eating, you buy food, you can't eat 100% organic, perfectly sourced food. But that's the ideal. So on here, I use Firefox every time I open a browser. I use Minds as much as I can. I use all the proprietary tools as sparingly as I can, and only when I have to. And what we're trying to do is migrate all the functionality from these proprietary spyware tools into Minds so that I can feel good in the back of my mind about the tools that I'm using. And like what we were talking about before, the reason the top social network in the world isn't free, open source, and like powered by the people democratically through voting and whatnot, is only because humanity hasn't created a competitive platform that's as good as all these proprietary tools, but at the same time respects your freedom. So we're getting closer to achieving that, and that's why Minds is gaining popularity, and that's why, I mean, Firefox is huge. It's like the top, I don't know, it's the top 2 or 3 browser in the world, so they did it. And so yeah, you have to put your phone down sometimes, and it's a weird thing because as humanity is evolving, we're becoming more and more physically connected with the technology that we're using. I mean, Cal, you're holding this camera right now. It's like an extension of your body, and I'm holding this, and I've got this mic in me, just like sort of interlacing. And so as we move forward, technology is getting to the point where, you know, your blindness could be cured with technology. You've seen those videos where people they hear for the first time and they start crying. So inevitably, we're going to create technology that enhances our lives and extends our lives potentially. But then you're also going to see people who just want an upgrade. You know, they want to put a brain chip in so that they can access all the world's knowledge anytime, and they don't care if that is a proprietary brain chip that could backdoor into their brain and turn them into a zombie. So the key is that technology is neutral, and it's about the nature of each specific technology in terms of the code that's powering it. So that is what determines if it's something I would want to use or not. If it's something that could backdoor my system and take over my body and turn me into a zombie, then I'm not really trying to use it. So it's like tech is branching. And so there's ethical tech that respects your freedom, gives you access to how it's made so you can understand the tool that you're connecting with yourself. Now, it gets even more complicated, like if you were dying and Google came to you and they said, okay, we have these little nanobots that we can give you, and they're going to go throughout your bloodstream and fix all these, cancer cells or whatever. Would you do it? Yeah, you probably would, whether or not it's proprietary. But the goal would be for there to be alternatives so that you wouldn't be forced into a position where you're basically risking your own personal sovereignty in order to have this upgraded life experience. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your freedom to harness these tools, but that's what these companies force you to do. They don't force you, but it's like, okay, so you're gonna die, or take the nanobot vaccine, or what, you're not gonna communicate with billions of people on Facebook because it's proprietary? I mean, most people are not gonna deny that. It's too tempting, and it helps our quality of life so much to be able to communicate. It helps us rise up and become more prosperous. And I mean, if you can't communicate on the internet properly, then you're risking your own personal success in some ways. Like, you might not be able to get jobs, network properly. So if those companies aren't going to offer ethical alternative to their products, then we're gonna have to build it. And so that's what we're doing. And there's tons of free and open source projects that care about this in terms of open science, open data. Every industry is going to start to have an open alternative to the normal proprietary stuff. So, you know, like you see that Tesla just open sourced some of the patents to their electric car battery, which is sort of a step in the right direction. They're understanding that in order for the greater market to grow, they want to give access to that information to more people so that more people develop on it. And that applies everywhere. So, yeah, it's like, I want to be, inevitably I'm going to be addicted to stuff. Like, addiction is not necessarily bad. It's sort of how you handle that addiction. Like, if you're addicted to, you know, helping people, if you're addicted to music, as long as you're not like destroying your body and destroying or hurting other people's experiences, then it's not really a big deal. So, I mean, if you're addicted to spreading freedom, spreading information, spreading access to information for people, then that's a positive thing. So when I'm sitting here all day and swiping, I want that to be, that's energy. Like, every one of those swipes, that's like something burning. Like, literally, there's something powering that on the other side. So, and you're also empowering a corporation with, depending on what app you're on. So there's a couple different layers to it. You want to empower the right corporations with each of your clicks or swipes or uploads or whatever. You don't want to just give that to someone who doesn't respect you. And ideally, we would also have all of the servers and everything powering mines coming from like clean energy sources, because it's crazy how much, I mean, one of the biggest energy consumers in the world are data centers from the internet. And it wouldn't really be too hard to power it all by solar and renewable technologies like that. Doesn't seem to be the priority of all the top networks, but we're making that our priority. And yeah, I mean, like radiation, I don't know, none of us know. Like, I sleep with this thing so close to my head. I know that I should just like throw it to the other side of the room, but I don't, because it's just like this part of my life now. And I get rid of it a lot. I mean, I'm pretty good about, like, when I'm in it, I'm immersed. And I don't want to feel guilty about that, because it's important to not regret how you're living your life, be in it. Like, you know, this is a modern typewriter. This is a modern book. Like, I read novels on here and articles, and I learn so much. So it's not something, don't hate yourself for using it, but don't be an asshole in the way, like, with communications with other people. Like, we just have to know how to use it consciously. But I also try not to take offense when other people aren't acting like me. Like, I sort of kind of used to be like that more. Like I would get offended if, people just didn't give a shit about the world. But that's so not useful. And actually, that kind of energy, when you give that to them, it only hurts your cause, because they sense that you're trying to convince them and overpower them, and that sucks. I don't want anyone to try to convince me how to live my life. So you just have to do what you do, and eventually it'll spread on its own. As long as what you're doing is compelling enough, then they're gonna make that decision on their own. Any thoughts from you, Cal?